I am here to record to film my birth story. I did this with Carmen as well. RJ is napping right now, and so is Carmen, so I'm going to keep him napping because if he wakes up now, he's probably going to want to eat. So I'm not going to wake him up till the very end of this video to show you guys. But if you have subscribed to me, you've already seen RJ. I've already uploaded the birth vlog, several vlogs since then. So, but anyway, after you watch this, if you haven't watched the birth vlog, you can go ahead and watch it, and it'll kind of show some of this stuff that happened. Okay, so I'm gonna start about a week before RJ's birth. So the week before that, I knew I was measuring big. But the next week we went back and I was still measuring big. Guys, I was measuring 42 weeks pregnant at 38 weeks pregnant. So the doctor was really concerned that baby was really big because Carmen was 8.5 pounds, which is a pretty big baby. I had her vaginally, but that is still a big baby. So he wanted me to, and boys tend to be bigger, second babies tend to be bigger sometimes, so he wanted me to go get a detailed ultrasound to check the baby's weight. So that my appointment was we scheduled an appointment scheduled an induction at that appointment in case, just in case. So we scheduled an induction because he was so big, for 6/29, which was a Wednesday at 10 p.m. So 6/29 the date, June 29th at 10 p.m. we had to be there. But that was basically just in case. So I went the next day for the detailed ultrasound, and that was on Monday, June 27th, and baby was estimated to be, that was two days before the planned induction. So baby was estimated to be 10 pounds on that ultrasound, which is what my doctor had figured by feeling around and my measurements and everything. And I will say that he was exactly right with Carmen, and he told me she'd be 8.5 pounds, and she was 8.5 pounds. And he's been right with all my other friends' babies. So anyway, the baby was 10 pounds. So the next day we went back to my OB for, just to go over what the ultrasound found. So we went back to my OB, and, he checked me, to see if I was making any change, and I had not made any change. I was barely a fingertip dilated and not softened at all. So I was making no progress, which is exactly what happened with Carmen. Only by my induction, I was 1 centimeter dilated with her. But anyway, the doctor then gave us the option to either have an induction the next week, because it's not really a good thing to go ahead and try to induce labor if you're not making any progress, because that leads to failed inductions, which happened with Carmen as well. But I was making a little progress with her, which is why I had an induction, but it still failed. So he gave me the option to wait another week, have an induction, or to have a C-section. Now, waiting with the induction was also scary, because they told me at my ultrasound that if I didn't go by the end of the week, that I would have to have stress tests. And I didn't like that. I mean, why would I have to have stress tests at 39 weeks if the baby is fine? Because baby's getting too big. So I was afraid if I waited another week, it just really makes me nervous. I was scared. As you guys know, we've had some losses, not this far along, but I was just nervous. I didn't like the fact that I would have to have a stress test, and I didn't want to go ahead and wait and have the induction and then baby really be too big and have to have a C-section anyway. So the doctor kind of explained to us the risks of a vaginal birth with birthing a baby that big. One, For mom, you have a greater risk of bleeding, a greater risk of a severe tear, a greater risk of an episiotomy. And for baby, there's a greater risk of stress, baby going into stress. There's a greater risk of baby getting stuck, and that can lead to shoulder dystocia, I think he called it, which is where it kind of damages the nerves in one shoulder, and it's not anything permanent, but I'm pretty sure it affects them for a couple weeks, or they can't really move one arm. And so at that point, basically just me, my husband wasn't really completely on board with the C-section, but he supported me. He just wasn't, he didn't understand more why I wanted it. But anyway, I decided I wanted the C-section because I felt as though there were more risks to the baby trying to birth him if he was estimated to be 10 pounds than there would be having a C-section. C-sections are actually pretty safe nowadays. They actually can be, like in instances like this, safer than a vaginal birth. So I went ahead and decided for the C-section, even though I had already had a successful vaginal birth and everything. I just felt it was the right thing to do for the baby. So we were scheduled the Thursday, June 30th at 12 for a C-section, but we had to be there at 10. But the C-section wasn't until 12. So anyway, fast forward to Thursday morning. I woke up at 4 a.m. I didn't go to bed till midnight. I woke up at 4 a.m. Couldn't go back to sleep. We left the house at 9 a.m. We got to the hospital at 10 a.m. I was prepped. I had an IV. I got the gown on. I got the hairnet thing. And my parents and my father-in-law arrived at the hospital around 11. And then I ended up going back for the C-section around 12. I actually walked back to the OR. So, and then I went in for my spinal, which took forever because he kept saying, arch your back like a cat. Well, when I think of a cat, I think of a cat being like this. No, a cat arches their back like this. So, and if you guys have never been pregnant, it is very hard, especially when you're as big as I was, to arch your back around this big, huge belly. Right now I can do it no problem, but when you have this big, huge belly right here, you can only arch so far. So anyway, it was really hard to get it in. He kept pushing up with his thumb to find the right spot. That part was worse than anything, was him pushing in with his fingers and his thumbs. It was horrible. That was worse than the actual, I think that was worse than the actual anesthetic that they put in before the spinal. But they did the anesthetic and they did the spinal, and I actually felt both. I felt the spinal, but I had a much better experience with my epidural that I had with Carmen than I did with the spinal. I don't really know what the difference was because it's kind of the same sort of procedure, but it was a different anesthesiologist, which I definitely liked my other anesthesiologist. I can't say it, but I definitely liked the one I had with Carmen better than this one. He was just kind of like nonchalant, and he was older, which doesn't have anything to do with it, but he was very nonchalant. He didn't really tell me what was going on during the procedure, which I had written in my birth plan that I wanted to know what was happening. And of course he didn't really tell me exactly what was happening, and he did say, I'll get to that later, but so anyway, he didn't really tell me what was happening, which obviously my doctor could have told me too, but he was actually doing the procedure. Spinal was put in at 12:08 p.m. And then Rex came in after that, and then the actual procedure started at 12:14 p.m. or I'm sorry, 12:18 p.m. And they actually had kind of a hard time getting him out because basically when he was in the right position and everything, but when the doctor went to use the forceps, I had so much fluid that he couldn't grasp his head because baby would just keep floating back up. That's how much fluid I had. He wasn't even engaged. So it's actually a very good thing that I didn't have that induction, because it probably would have ended up with a C-section and a in distress baby. Basically the anesthesiologist did tell me then, this was the one time he did kind of tell me what was going on. He said, oh, they're kind of had a hard time getting the baby out. The baby's a little bit stuck. That's all he said. He didn't tell me what was actually going on. So, anyway, baby was born at 12:40 p.m. and I knew he was born because I could hear, the nurses were like, oh, you know, they make that sound, or hi, or, you know, they start talking to the baby. And I could hear the suctioning, and I just started bawling. Like, I couldn't move anything. I just had tears rolling down my face. Oh my gosh. And I was kind of loopy through all this, but I wasn't so loopy that I don't remember anything, obviously. So that's good. But my hands were tingly, which was really odd. That's how good my spinal worked. I did not feel anything. Guys, all I felt was like, imagine this is like your pelvic area. All I felt was like, this is what it felt like. Somebody flicking, like flick, 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 flicking. That's all I felt the whole time, was it like this. Which was obviously them like moving things and everything, but that's all I felt. It was really weird. So anyway, baby was born at 12:40. It took a little bit for him to cry. Not as long as it took Carmen, because he didn't have any issues. Carmen had to have oxygen. He, from what I know, didn't have to have oxygen. I mean, he might have had to have like the little mask, but he didn't have to be under the oxygen hoof. Carmen had to be under an oxygen hoof for like an hour. So anyway, it took a little bit for the baby to cry. It probably took 2 minutes maybe, but it seemed like longer than that. Then he started crying, and I started crying more. And then Rex went over to see the baby and everything and got to hold him. And then Rex brought the baby to me around 1 to see. They wouldn't let me hold him. The anesthesiologist wouldn't let me hold him, which really ticked me off too, because he said, oh, she's doing kind of, because I was getting hot. I was getting hot. So he wouldn't let me hold him, which I guess is just a safety precaution, but it kind of ticked me off because, okay, I'm hot. Can I please still hold my baby? Like, between Rex going to see the baby and baby being brought to me, baby was weighed, and baby was 813. So he was a whole pound and some odd ounces of 10 pounds. So that kind of made me a little bit upset. But I knew already when I had the C-section that could be a possibility, as he wouldn't be as big as they thought he was. But the reason they thought he was so big is because his head was huge. He has a huge head. I think it measured 37 inches, 37 centimeters when he was born, which is a really big head. Carmen's head was only 36 centimeters, so she was a whole another centimeter smaller. They told Rex that he could either stay with me or go ahead and like update the family. So he went ahead and updated the family, and right after he left, my doctor left, and he kind of told me what happened with him getting stuck. And then they brought the baby back to me, laid him on my chest finally at about 1:15, and then we went back to our room at 1:30. We were there for 4 days, and then we went home. I'm not going to get into details about my recovery or anything, because I want to make a C-section recovery video, so I don't want to do that with this. But that is my birth story. Actually, I just thought to bring the camera to him instead of him to the camera. But here's little Mr. RJ. He is 7 weeks old. Precious little boy. And I honestly wouldn't change anything about my birth in the end, because I did what I thought was right for him. Even though he wasn't as big as I thought, I did what I thought was right. And he's here, and he's healthy, and he's safe. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.